Your life begins in an egg. Your mother didn't stick around to see you hatch. She did her job months ago when she carried you and thousands of your siblings to the water's edge. She held you close to her body for weeks, keeping you safe while you developed inside your eggs. But once she released you into the waves, that was it. You're on your own now, and she's already moved on, probably mating again and preparing for the next batch of eggs. The moment you break free from your eggs, you're not even recognizable as a crab yet. You're what scientists call a zoea, which is basically a microscopic swimming nightmare with huge eyes and spindly legs. You look more like an alien than anything that belongs on this planet. Your body is transparent, your limbs are barely functional, and you have absolutely no idea what you're supposed to do next. But your instincts kick in immediately because they have to. You start swimming, not because you want to, but because if you stop moving, you're dead. The ocean around you is chaos. Millions of other zoeas are doing the same thing you are, frantically swimming through the water, trying to find food and avoid becoming food themselves. You're part of what marine biologists call the plankton, which sounds peaceful until you realize that plankton is basically just a fancy word for floating buffet. Everything in the ocean eats plankton, and you're swimming right in the middle of it all. Your first meal is going to be even tinier than you are. You're looking for algae, bacteria, bits of organic matter that drift through the water like underwater snow. You don't hunt for this food, you filter it. Your body is designed to catch whatever floats by, and you're constantly moving your little appendages to create currents that bring food toward your mouth. It's not glamorous, but it keeps you alive. The problem is that while you're trying to eat, everything else is trying to eat you. Small fish cruise through the water column with their mouths open, filtering out thousands of zoea like you without even thinking about it. Jellyfish drift by with their tentacles spread wide, and if you swim into one of those, you're done. Even other zoea will eat you if they get the chance. Cannibalism isn't personal in the ocean. It's just practical. You're going to molt for the first time within days of hatching. Your tiny exoskeleton becomes too tight, and you have to shed it like taking off a jacket that's too small. But here's the terrifying part. When you molt, you're completely defenseless. Your new shell is soft and vulnerable, and it takes hours to harden. During that time, you're basically a floating snack waiting to be eaten. You can't swim properly, you can't defend yourself, and you certainly can't escape if something decides you look tasty. Most of your siblings die during their first molt. They get eaten while they're soft, or they mess up the molting process and get stuck halfway out of their old shell. You watch them struggle and then disappear into the bellies of fish or get torn apart by the currents. There's nothing you can do to help them, and honestly, you're too busy trying to survive your own molt to worry about anyone else. If you make it through that first molt, you're slightly bigger and slightly stronger, but you're still basically helpless. You're going to molt several more times over the next few weeks, and each time is just as dangerous as the first. Your body is changing with every molt, developing new appendages, growing stronger swimming legs, and slowly starting to look more like an actual crab. But you're still transparent, still tiny, and still completely at the mercy of the ocean. The currents are your enemy and your salvation at the same time. They can carry you away from food sources and dump you in areas where there's nothing to eat. But they can also carry you away from predators and push you toward rich feeding grounds. You have no control over where you go. You're just along for the ride, swimming frantically to stay in the water column and hoping the ocean doesn't decide to kill you today. Temperature changes can wipe out entire populations of zoea in hours. If the water gets too warm or too cold, your metabolism goes haywire and you die. Ocean chemistry changes can do the same thing. Too much acid, not enough oxygen, the wrong mix of nutrients, and suddenly you're floating belly up with millions of your relatives. You don't understand any of this, of course. You just know that sometimes the water feels wrong, and when it feels wrong, zoea start dying. After about a month of this nightmare, if you're still alive, your body starts preparing for the next phase. You're going to molt one more time, but this molt is different. This time, when you shed your skin, you're going to transform into something called a megalopa. You're still not a real crab yet, but you're getting closer. Your body becomes less transparent, your claws start to develop, and most importantly, you start to sink. Up until now, you've been fighting to stay near the surface where the food is, but as a megalopa, you want to get closer to the bottom. You're preparing for life on land, even though you don't know it yet. Your swimming becomes more purposeful, less frantic. You're looking for something, though you're not sure what. Your instincts are telling you to find shallow water, to find a place where the ocean meets the land. The transition from the open ocean to the shallows is like entering a completely different world. The water is warmer, more turbulent, and full of different kinds of dangers. Crabs scuttle across the bottom, fish dart between rocks and coral, and everything is more crowded, more competitive. You're not just trying to avoid being eaten anymore. You're trying to find a place where you can complete your transformation into a real crab. You're looking for a shell, not just any shell, but an empty gastropod shell that you can fit into. This is going to be your home, your armor, and your mobile fortress all rolled into one. But finding the right shell is harder than it sounds. Most of the good shells are already taken by other hermit crabs, and the empty ones are usually empty for a reason. They're cracked, too small, or in terrible locations where the waves will smash you against the rocks. When you finally find a shell that might work, you have to inspect it carefully. You probe it with your claws, checking for cracks or holes. You test the opening to make sure you can fit inside. You even smell it to make sure it's not rotting or full of parasites. If it passes all your tests, you make the move. You quickly back your soft abdomen into the shell, and suddenly you're a hermit crab, but you're not safe yet. Other hermit crabs are watching you, sizing up your new shell, wondering if it's better than theirs. If they decide they want what you have, they'll fight you for it. These fights can be brutal, with crabs locked together, pulling and pushing, trying to drag each other out of their shells. If you lose, you're back to being homeless and vulnerable. If you win, you get to keep your shell, but you've also made enemies. The shell changes everything about how you move and behave. You're no longer a graceful swimmer, you're a bottom dweller now, scuttling across rocks and sand, hiding in crevices when predators appear. Your shell is heavy and awkward, but it's also protection. Fish that would have eaten you instantly when you were a zoea. Now think twice about trying to bite through your armored home. You're still molting regularly, but now it's even more complicated because you have to coordinate your growth with your shell. When you outgrow your current shell, you have to find a bigger one, and that means more house hunting, more fighting, more risk. Every time you change shells, you're vulnerable for those few seconds when you're moving from one to the other. Predators know this, and they watch for crabs in transition. Your diet is expanding too. You're not just filtering microscopic food anymore. You're actively hunting for small worms, bits of dead fish, algae growing on rocks. You're becoming a scavenger, cleaning up the ocean floor one bite at a time. Your claws are getting stronger, your eyesight is improving, and you're starting to understand the complex social dynamics of the reef ecosystem. Other crabs are your competition, your potential mates, and your biggest threat all at the same time. Hermit crabs form complex hierarchies based on shell quality, size, and fighting ability. If you want the best food sources and the safest hiding spots, you need to establish your place in this hierarchy. That means fighting, intimidating smaller crabs, and knowing when to back down from bigger ones. The reef is full of predators that specialize in eating crabs like you. Octopi can pull you right out of your shell with their powerful arms. Certain fish have developed techniques for cracking shells or sucking crabs out of them. Even other crabs, bigger species that don't need shells, see you as an easy meal. You're constantly scanning for danger, ready to retreat into your shell at the first sign of trouble. But you're growing stronger and smarter every day. Your claws are becoming more dexterous, capable of manipulating objects and tearing apart food. Your eyes are developing better resolution, allowing you to spot predators and food sources from greater distances. Your brain, such as it is learning to recognize patterns, remember locations, and make increasingly complex decisions about risk and reward. You're also developing something that will become crucial later in your life: the ability to survive out of water for short periods. Your gills are changing, becoming more efficient at extracting oxygen from both water and air. You start making brief excursions onto wet rocks, testing your ability to breathe air. These trips are terrifying at first, but they're preparing you for the biggest transition of your life. The urge to leave the water is getting stronger. You don't understand why, but something is calling you toward the land. Your body is changing in ways that make less and less sense for an aquatic lifestyle. Your gills are becoming more like lungs. Your legs are getting stronger for walking rather than swimming, and your behavior is becoming more terrestrial every day. One day, you make the decision that will define the rest of your life. You leave the water. You scuttle up onto the beach, still wearing your shell, still looking like a hermit crab, but taking your first steps into a world that no other crab has successfully conquered. The transition from ocean to land is the most dangerous thing you'll ever do, but it's also the beginning of your transformation into one of the most remarkable creatures on Earth. The beach is alien territory. The sand is hot and dry. The air is thin and strange, and everything about this environment is hostile to a creature that spent its entire life underwater. But your body is ready for this, even if your mind isn't. Your modified gills start extracting oxygen from the air. Your strengthened legs carry you across the sand, and your improved vision helps you navigate this new world. You're not alone on the beach. Other hermit crabs are making the same journey, and some of them have been living on land for months or even years. They're your guides and your competition, showing you where to find food and water, while also making sure you know your place in the terrestrial hierarchy. The rules are different on land, but the basic principles are the same. Be strong, be smart, and don't let anyone take what's yours. Your terrestrial life is just beginning, but the land presents challenges your oceanic existence never prepared you for. The first thing you notice is how different your body feels. Your gills have sealed shut, replaced by primitive lungs that draw oxygen directly from the air. Your legs, once used for swimming, now carry your weight across rough surfaces. The shell you've relied on for protection feels heavier here, dragging against rocks and sand with every step. Food is everywhere, but it's not the same. Instead of filtering plankton or scavenging dead fish, you're drawn to fallen fruit, decaying leaves, and the occasional insect. Your claws, which once helped you grip shells underwater, now prove useful for tearing through tough plant matter. You discover that coconuts, those massive brown spheres that occasionally fell into your ocean habitat, are actually treasure troves of nutrition. Your powerful claws can crack them open, revealing the sweet meat inside. But you're not alone on this island. Other coconut crabs have claimed territories, and they're not welcoming. The first one you encounter is massive, easily 3 times your size. Its claws are thick as tree branches, scarred from countless battles. It doesn't attack immediately, instead raising itself up on its hind legs, claws spread wide in a threat display. You freeze, every instinct screaming at you to retreat. This is no longer about finding the biggest shell or the best hiding spot. This is about survival in a world where size and strength determine who eats and who starves. You back away slowly, keeping your claws visible but non-threatening. The larger crab watches you go, satisfied that you understand the hierarchy. You've learned your first lesson about terrestrial life. Respect the established order or face the consequences. As you retreat, you notice something interesting. The big crab's territory is marked with scent trails, invisible to most creatures, but clear as day to your sensitive antennae. These chemical signatures tell a story of dominance, territory boundaries, and warnings to stay away. Finding your own space becomes a priority. You explore the island's edges, staying away from the prime real estate claimed by the giants. Eventually, you discover a small cave system near the beach, partially hidden by overhanging vegetation. It's not perfect, but it's yours. You mark it with your own scent, a declaration to other crabs that this space is occupied. The cave provides shelter from the harsh sun and protection from the island's aerial predators, birds that would love nothing more than to crack open your shell and feast on the meat inside. Your first few weeks on land are a constant learning process. You discover that your eyesight, once adequate for the murky ocean depths, is surprisingly sharp in the bright island light. You can spot movement from impressive distances, tracking the flight patterns of birds and the subtle movements of potential prey. Your sense of smell has also adapted, becoming far more sophisticated than it ever was underwater. You can detect the sweetness of ripe fruit from meters away, the acrid scent of danger, and the complex chemical messages left by other crabs. Water becomes a critical concern. Unlike your ocean days when you were surrounded by it, fresh water is scarce and precious. You learn to collect rainwater in small depressions, to find moisture in the early morning dew, and to extract liquid from the foods you eat. Your body has adapted to conserve water more efficiently, but dehydration is always a threat. You discover that certain plants store water in their leaves and stems, and you become skilled at identifying these natural reservoirs. The social dynamics of land life are far more complex than anything you experienced in the ocean. Coconut crabs have a sophisticated hierarchy based on size, age, and territory quality. You watch from a distance as disputes play out between equals, violent clashes that can last for hours. The losers don't just retreat, they often emerge missing claws or legs, permanently marked by their failure to measure up. You realize that every interaction is a potential challenge, every meeting a test of your place in the island's social order. Your first real test comes when you encounter another crab of similar size. It's near a fallen coconut, the kind of prize that neither of you can afford to walk away from. The other crab sees you approaching and immediately adopts a defensive posture, claws raised and body angled to protect its find. You circle each other warily, each looking for an advantage. The dance is almost ritualistic, a series of feints and displays designed to determine who will claim the prize without resorting to actual combat. The other crab makes the first move, rushing forward with claws snapping. You sidestep, using your superior agility to avoid the attack. Your opponent is strong but slow, relying on brute force rather than strategy, You wait for an opening, then dart in quickly, grabbing one of its claws with your own. The grip is solid, and you begin to squeeze, applying pressure to the joint. Your opponent struggles, trying to break free, but you hold firm. After several tense moments, it yields, backing away and abandoning the coconut. Victory tastes sweet, literally. The coconut meat is rich and satisfying, providing the energy and nutrients your growing body needs. But more importantly, you've established yourself as a competitor, someone who can't be easily intimidated or pushed around. Word spreads quickly through the island's crab community, carried by scent trails and territorial markings. You're no longer just another newcomer, you're a presence to be reckoned with. As you grow larger and stronger, your confidence increases. You begin to explore more of the island, venturing into territories that were once off limits. You discover that the island is home to more than just coconut crabs. There are birds that nest in the trees, their eggs a valuable source of protein. There are insects hiding under rocks and logs, quick bursts of nutrition that supplement your plant-based diet. There are even small mammals that make their homes in the island's interior, though they're too fast and clever for you to catch easily. Your hunting techniques become more sophisticated. You learn to use your size and strength to your advantage, overturning rocks to expose hiding prey, climbing trees to reach bird nests, and using your powerful claws to crack open shells and tough plant matter. You develop patience, spending hours waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Your success rate improves dramatically as you master these new skills, transforming from a clumsy newcomer into a skilled predator. But the island holds dangers beyond competing crabs. There are nights when the wind carries the scent of something else, something that doesn't belong to the normal ecosystem. You learn to recognize the warning signs, the sudden silence of birds, the way other crabs retreat to their hiding places, the subtle changes in air pressure that signal approaching storms. Your cave becomes more than just shelter. It's a fortress where you can wait out the dangers that prowl the island after dark. The transformation from sea to land is complete, but it's only the beginning of your journey. You've established yourself as a member of the island's community, carved out your own territory, and learned to thrive in an environment that once seemed impossibly hostile. Your shell, once a borrowed home from a dead mollusk, has become a part of you, strengthened and hardened by your terrestrial lifestyle. Your claws, once used for gripping and climbing, are now weapons and tools capable of incredible feats of strength and precision. As you settle into your cave for another night, you can feel the changes continuing within your body. Your exoskeleton is hardening, your muscles are growing stronger, and your senses are becoming even more acute. The ocean that once defined your existence feels like a distant memory, replaced by the immediate reality of island life. You've become something new, something that bridges the gap between sea and land, carrying the lessons of both worlds within your armored shell. As you grow into a fully functional hermit crab, your world becomes increasingly complex and dangerous. You've traded the simplicity of being a floating larva for the harsh realities of terrestrial life. Every day brings new challenges, new threats, and new opportunities to prove you belong on this island. The competition isn't just fierce, it's relentless. Other crabs eye your shell constantly, sizing you up, waiting for any sign of weakness. You've learned to recognize that look, the way their claws twitch when they think they've found an easy target. Your current shell is getting tight again. The familiar pressure builds inside, that uncomfortable squeeze that tells you it's time to upgrade. But finding a new shell isn't like picking fruit from a tree. Good shells are rare, fought over, and jealously guarded. You've been scouting for weeks, checking the usual spots where shells wash up on the beach. Most of what you find is either too small, cracked, or already claimed by someone bigger than you. The few decent shells you've spotted are defended by crabs who could crush you without breaking a sweat. You remember the last time you tried to negotiate for a shell. The owner, a massive crab twice your size, barely acknowledged your presence. When you got too close, he clicked his claws in a warning that needed no translation. You backed off immediately, but not before noting exactly where he kept his collection. Patience is everything in this business. You'll wait for the right moment. When he's distracted or vulnerable, every crab has to molt eventually, and when they do, they become temporarily defenseless. That's when opportunities arise. The island's ecosystem operates on a brutal hierarchy, and you're nowhere near the top. Above you lurk the true giants, coconut crabs so massive they can crack coconuts with their bare claws. These monsters command respect through sheer size and strength. When one of them appears, smaller crabs scatter like leaves in a hurricane. You've seen what happens to those who don't move fast enough. The giants don't just take what they want, they obliterate anything that stands in their way. Their shells are fortresses, their claws are weapons, and their patience is infinite. But size isn't everything on this island. You've learned to use cunning where you lack strength. When the giants are feeding, you slip in to grab whatever scraps they leave behind. When they're sleeping, you explore territories that would normally be off limits. You've discovered that timing is everything. Early morning, just after sunrise, is when the nocturnal predators retreat and the diurnal ones haven't fully awakened. That narrow window gives you opportunities to hunt, scavenge, and explore without constant threat. Your diet has expanded dramatically since those early days of picking at coconut meat. Now you're a sophisticated predator and scavenger. You've learned to read the signs that indicate food sources. The buzz of flies means carrion nearby. The rustle of leaves might hide insects or small lizards. The sound of crashing waves often brings fresh opportunities washed up on the beach. You've become particularly skilled at hunting the small crabs that inhabit tidal pools. They're quick, but you're quicker. Your reflexes have sharpened to the point where you can snatch them before they realize the danger. The island's bird population provides both opportunity and terror. Dead birds are a feast, but living birds are death from above. You've learned to recognize the shadows that spell doom, the particular way light changes when a frigate bird circles overhead. Your response is now instinctive, immediate, and absolute. The moment you sense aerial danger, you freeze completely. Movement draws their attention, and their attention means death. You've watched too many crabs get snatched by talons to take any chances. Your social interactions have grown more complex as well. You've learned to read the subtle signals that other crabs use to communicate. A raised claw might be a threat or a greeting, depending on the context. The angle of their body tells you whether they're confident or nervous. The way they move their antennae reveals their intentions. You've developed your own repertoire of signals, ways to indicate that you're not a threat, that you're willing to share resources, or that you're prepared to fight if necessary. Territory becomes increasingly important as you grow. You've established a rough home base, a collection of hiding spots and food sources that you patrol regularly. It's not much, just a few square meters of rocky coastline, but it's yours. You've marked it with your scent, memorized every crevice and shadow, and fought off multiple attempts at invasion. Other crabs test your boundaries constantly, probing for weakness, looking for opportunities to expand their own territories at your expense. The most dangerous moments come during shell changes. When your current shell becomes too tight, you're forced into a terrifying ritual of vulnerability. You have to find a new shell, examine it thoroughly, and then make the lightning fast switch from old to new. During those few seconds, when you're between shells, you're completely exposed. Your soft abdomen, normally protected by hard calcium carbonate, is vulnerable to any predator that happens to be watching. You've learned to choose your moments carefully, to scout for threats, to have escape routes planned. But even with all your caution, close calls are inevitable. Last week, you barely escaped a hunting coconut crab that appeared while you were investigating a promising shell. The monster's claws missed your retreating form by mere millimeters. You spent the rest of that day hidden in the deepest crevice you could find, heart pounding, replaying the encounter over and over. The shell you'd been examining was crushed to powder, a demonstration of what would have happened to you if you'd been a fraction of a second slower. Food competition reaches peak intensity during the dry season. Resources become scarce, and every meal becomes a battle. You've learned to eat quickly, to grab what you can and retreat to safety before competitors arrive. The sound of feeding draws other crabs like a dinner bell, and sharing isn't part of the island's social contract. You've developed techniques for hiding food, for eating in stages, for making small meals last longer. Survival isn't just about finding food, it's about keeping it long enough to actually consume it. The island's weather patterns have become part of your survival calculations. You know when the rains are coming by, the way the air feels, the way the birds behave, the subtle changes in atmospheric pressure. Storms bring both danger and opportunity. The winds can kill you if you're caught in the open, but they also bring down fruit, wash up new shells, and create chaos that can be exploited. You've learned to read the signs, to take shelter when necessary, and to emerge quickly when the opportunities arise. Your understanding of the island's geography has become encyclopedic. You know every trail, every hiding spot, every food source, every danger zone. You've mapped the territories of larger crabs, the hunting patterns of birds, the tidal schedules that determine when certain areas become accessible. This knowledge is your greatest asset, more valuable than size or strength. It's what allows you to survive in a world where everything else wants to kill you. The transformation from helpless larva to cunning survivor is now complete. You've mastered the art of island living, learned to balance aggression with caution, developed the skills necessary to thrive in this harsh environment. But your journey is far from over. The island holds many more challenges, many more lessons, many more opportunities to prove that you belong here. Every day brings new tests of your abilities, new chances to grow stronger, new ways to push the boundaries of what's possible for a creature of your size. You've adapted to land completely now. Your body has grown massive. Your shell abandoned long ago when you realized no natural shell could contain your expanding frame. Your exoskeleton has hardened into thick, protective armor, and your claws have evolved into powerful tools capable of cracking open coconuts with devastating force. You're no longer the vulnerable creature that once scrambled for scraps. You're an apex predator in your island ecosystem, and everything smaller than you knows it. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Month by month, your body stretched and strengthened. Your lungs developed specialized chambers that extract oxygen from air with ruthless efficiency. Your legs grew thick and muscular, capable of supporting your considerable weight as you climbed trees that would snap under lesser creatures. Your sense of smell became so acute you can detect a rotting fish from hundreds of meters away, and your compound eyes can spot movement in near total darkness. But with size comes responsibility. You need more food now, much more. A single coconut that once satisfied you for days now barely registers as a snack. You've learned to hunt strategically, timing your movements with the precision of a predator that can't afford to waste energy on failed attempts. Small crabs flee when they catch your scent. Birds avoid the trees where you've left your marks. Even the rats have learned to stay clear of your territory. Your hunting technique has evolved into something almost surgical. You position yourself near known food sources and wait. Patience is your greatest weapon now. When a seabird lands within range, you don't rush. You calculate the distance, account for wind direction, and strike with explosive speed. Your claws close around your prey before it even realizes the danger. The kill is quick, efficient, and final. Territory disputes have become rare. Most coconut crabs recognize your dominance and give you a wide berth. When challenges do arise, they're settled quickly. You've learned to read the subtle signs of aggression, the positioning that signals an impending attack. Your responses are measured but devastating. A single swipe of your claw can send a challenger tumbling backward, and your intimidating size usually ends conflicts before they begin. The island has become your personal hunting ground. You know every rock formation, every tide pool, every tree that bears fruit. You've mapped the movement patterns of seabirds, identified the best spots for finding washed-up carrion, and located the hidden caches where smaller crabs store their food. Nothing happens on your territory without your knowledge. Your daily routine has settled into a rhythm of calculated efficiency. Dawn brings the first hunt, usually targeting the crabs that venture out during the cooler morning hours. You move through the undergrowth with surprising stealth for your size, your footsteps carefully placed to avoid snapping twigs or rustling leaves. When you spot a target, you freeze, becoming as still as the rocks around you, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Midday heat forces you to seek shade, but you're never truly at rest. Your senses remain alert, constantly scanning for threats or opportunities. You've learned to position yourself where you can monitor multiple approach routes simultaneously. Your compound eyes move independently, one tracking movement in the canopy, while the other surveys the ground level. The afternoon brings different challenges. This is when the larger predators are most active, and you must balance aggression with caution. You've had encounters with monitor lizards that tested your reflexes, and you've learned to respect the territorial boundaries of the island's more dangerous inhabitants. Survival at your size isn't just about being the biggest predator. It's about knowing when to fight and when to retreat. Evening hunting is your specialty. As darkness falls, your advantages multiply. Your night vision gives you a significant edge over most prey, and your ability to remain motionless for hours makes you nearly invisible. You've perfected the art of the ambush, positioning yourself along well-traveled paths and waiting for unsuspecting victims to wander within range. But it's not just about hunting. You've become a master scavenger, able to detect the scent of death from remarkable distances. When a larger animal dies on the island, you're often the first to arrive. Your powerful claws can tear through tough hide and crack bones that would defeat smaller scavengers. You've learned to eat quickly and efficiently, taking what you need before other predators arrive to claim their share. Your shell-changing days are behind you now, but you still face the challenge of molting. As your body grows, your exoskeleton must be shed and replaced. These periods of vulnerability are the most dangerous times in your life. You must find a secure hiding place and remain motionless for days while your new shell hardens. During these times, you're defenseless against predators, and you must rely on your intelligence and planning to survive. The island's ecosystem has adapted to your presence. Smaller creatures have learned to avoid your territory or move through it with extreme caution. Some have even developed strategies to exploit your hunting success, waiting for you to finish feeding before moving in to claim scraps. You tolerate these opportunists because they serve a purpose, cleaning up the remains that might otherwise attract less welcome visitors. Your intelligence has grown along with your body. You've learned to use tools, manipulating sticks and rocks to extract food from difficult-to-reach places. You can remember the locations of multiple food caches, the timing of seasonal migrations, and the behavioral patterns of dozens of different species. Your brain has become a sophisticated database of survival information. Water management has become crucial. Your large body requires significant amounts of fresh water, and you've learned to locate and monopolize the best sources. You've discovered that certain plants collect rainwater in their leaves, and you've memorized the locations of natural rock basins that hold water long after the rains stop. During dry seasons, this knowledge becomes the difference between life and death. The seasonal changes bring different challenges and opportunities. Breeding seasons for various species create windows of vulnerability that you've learned to exploit. Storm seasons bring both danger and opportunity, as high winds knock fruit from trees and rough seas wash unusual prey onto the shore. You've developed strategies for each season, adapting your hunting and foraging techniques to match the changing conditions. Your social interactions have become complex power games. When you encounter other large coconut crabs, the meetings are tense affairs of posturing and threat displays. You've learned to read the subtle signs of submission or aggression, and you respond accordingly. Sometimes these encounters end in violent clashes, but more often they're resolved through displays of dominance that avoid unnecessary injury. The island's ecosystem revolves around your presence now. You're both predator and ecosystem engineer, your activities shaping the environment for countless other species. Your feeding habits influence plant growth patterns. Your territorial behavior affects the movement of smaller animals, and your presence keeps certain populations in check. You've become an integral part of the island's delicate balance. Human encounters have become more frequent as boats occasionally pass near your island. You've learned to observe these strange creatures from a distance, noting their behaviors and assessing whether they represent threats or opportunities. Their discarded items sometimes wash ashore, providing new materials for tool use and occasionally containing food scraps that supplement your diet. Your body has reached its physical peak. Every muscle fiber has been honed by years of climbing, fighting, and hunting. Your reflexes are lightning fast, your strength is devastating, and your endurance seems limitless. You can climb vertical cliff faces, crack open the toughest coconuts, and overpower virtually any creature that dares challenge you. You've become the ultimate expression of terrestrial crab evolution. But with this power comes isolation. You're too large and too aggressive for most social interactions. Your presence intimidates even other coconut crabs, and you've grown accustomed to solitude. The island is your kingdom, and you rule it with an iron claw, but it's a lonely throne. You've sacrificed companionship for dominance, and the trade-off weighs heavily in the quiet moments between hunts. The future stretches ahead of you, full of challenges and opportunities. You've mastered your environment, but the island continues to test you with new situations and unexpected threats. Your intelligence and adaptability will be your greatest assets as you face whatever comes next. You've survived the journey from helpless larva to apex predator, and now you must maintain your position at the top of the food chain. You've become something extraordinary now. Your shell has hardened into an impenetrable fortress. Your claws have transformed into weapons of mass destruction, and your body has swollen to the size of a small car. You are no longer just surviving on this island. You own it, every tree, every rock, Every scrap of food belongs to you. The transformation is complete, and nothing can challenge your dominance. At 30 pounds of pure muscle and armor, you've reached the pinnacle of terrestrial crustacean evolution. Your claws can crack coconuts like walnuts, tear through metal, and crush bones with the force of a hydraulic press. Your exoskeleton deflects attacks that would kill lesser creatures. You are the apex predator of your domain, and every animal on this island knows it. Your territory spans miles now. You've marked every boundary, claimed every food source, and established dominance over every competitor. The smaller coconut crab that once dared to challenge you are gone. The birds that used to steal your food, they've learned to stay out of your way. Even the humans who occasionally visit your island give you a wide berth. You've become a legend, a monster story they tell their children. But this power comes with a price. Your enormous size means you need massive amounts of food to survive. A single coconut that once satisfied you for days now barely registers as a snack. You spend your nights climbing the tallest palm trees, your claws finding purchase on bark that would be impossible for any other creature to grip. You tear through coconuts with methodical precision, consuming everything edible before moving to the next tree. Your hunting skills have evolved beyond simple opportunism. You've become a strategic predator, capable of planning complex ambushes. When seabirds nest on your island, you don't just grab the first one you see. You study their patterns, learn their routines, and strike when they're most vulnerable. You figured out how to use tools, manipulating sticks and rocks to reach food in impossible places. Your intelligence has grown alongside your body. The island ecosystem revolves around you now. You are the apex predator, the primary scavenger, and the dominant force that shapes everything around you. Smaller animals adjust their behavior based on your movements. Plants grow differently because of how you feed. You've become an ecosystem engineer, reshaping your environment simply by existing in it. Your senses have sharpened to supernatural levels. You can detect the faintest scent of food from miles away. Your eyes can spot movement in complete darkness. Your antennae pick up chemical signals that reveal the location of every living thing on your island. You know when intruders arrive before they even step foot on the beach. But your greatest weapon isn't your size or strength, it's your patience. You've learned to wait for the perfect moment to strike. You can remain motionless for hours, watching and calculating. When tourists drop food scraps, you don't rush in like a desperate scavenger. You wait until they're gone, then claim what's yours. When other crabs venture into your territory, you don't immediately attack. You let them think they're safe, then strike when they least expect it. Your dominance extends beyond simple predation. You've become the island's cleanup crew, consuming everything that dies or decays. Dead fish that wash ashore, fallen fruits, rotting vegetation, even the occasional small mammal that doesn't survive the island's harsh conditions. Nothing goes to waste when you're around. You've turned decomposition into an art form, efficiently breaking down organic matter and recycling it back into the ecosystem. The seasonal changes that once challenged you now work in your favor. During storm season, you retreat to the deepest caves, your massive body wedged into spaces that seem impossible for something your size. You've learned to predict weather patterns, stockpiling food before harsh conditions arrive. When the storms pass, you emerge to find the island transformed, new food sources exposed, and weaker competitors eliminated. Your interactions with humans have become legendary. Scientists who study your species speak of you in hushed tones, sharing stories of your incredible size and intelligence. You've learned to recognize individual humans, remembering which ones bring food and which ones pose threats. You've figured out how to open their containers, manipulate their equipment, and even steal their belongings. You've become a master thief, capable of breaking into supposedly secure storage areas. The loneliness that began in your juvenile years has deepened into something profound. You are the only creature of your size and intelligence on this island. There are no equals, no companions, no one who can understand the weight of your existence. You've become a king without subjects, a god without worshippers. Your power is absolute, but it's also isolating. Your reproductive instincts still drive you, but finding a suitable mate has become nearly impossible. Your size and aggression make you intimidating to potential partners. The few females who venture into your territory are either too small to interest you or too afraid to approach. You've become a genetic dead end, your superior traits trapped in a body that's too successful for its own good. The island itself has become an extension of your body. You know every tree, every rock, every hiding place. You've worn paths through the jungle with your massive claws, created clearings where you feed, and established a network of caves and burrows that serve as your fortress. The landscape tells the story of your dominance, marked by the scars of your presence. Your memory has become encyclopedic. You remember every threat, every opportunity, every change in your environment. You can recall the exact location of food sources from years ago, the behavior patterns of long-dead competitors, and the seasonal rhythms that govern your island. Your brain has become a living database of survival information, but perhaps most remarkably, you've developed something approaching wisdom. You understand the delicate balance of your ecosystem and your role within it. You know when to hunt aggressively and when to conserve energy. You've learned to manage your territory like a resource, ensuring that your dominance doesn't destroy the very environment that sustains you. You've become living proof that evolution never stops, that given enough time and pressure, a creature can transform into something magnificent and terrifying. You are no longer just a coconut crab. You are an evolutionary masterpiece, a perfect killing machine wrapped in an impenetrable shell. You are the undisputed ruler of your domain, and your reign shows no signs of ending. By now you've learned the fundamental lesson that power comes with a price. Your massive form commands respect, but it also demands territory. The island isn't big enough for two apex predators, and you've claimed every inch worth claiming. The rocky outcroppings where the best shellfish cluster, the fallen log where beetles gather, the freshwater pools that never dry up during the harsh months. All of it bears your scent. All of it falls under your domain. But territory means nothing without the strength to defend it. You've grown large enough that most creatures avoid you entirely. Birds take flight when they spot your silhouette moving through the undergrowth. Smaller crabs scatter when they catch your scent on the wind. Even the monitor lizards that once posed a threat now give you a wide berth. Your claws can crush bone, your armor deflects most attacks, and your sheer mass makes you nearly unstoppable. Yet there are still challengers. Other coconut crabs, nearly as large as you, occasionally drift onto your shores. They arrive hungry, desperate, and willing to fight for what you've built. These encounters are brutal affairs, two armored giants clashing in the darkness, claws locked in mortal combat, each trying to find the weak point in the other's defense. The sound of exoskeleton against exoskeleton echoes through the night like thunder. The fights are exhausting. Your opponent matches your size, but lacks your experience, your intimate knowledge of every rock and crevice on this island. You use the terrain to your advantage, forcing them toward the cliff edges where one misstep means a fatal fall. You've learned to target their joints, the soft spots where their armor plates meet. Most challengers retreat after losing a limb or suffering a crushing blow to their carapace. Those who refuse to yield don't survive to make that mistake again. Victory brings temporary peace, but it also brings loneliness. You patrol your territory in solitude, your massive form casting long shadows in the moonlight. There's no one to share your success with, no companion to appreciate the empire you've built. The silence is deafening after the chaos of battle. You've become so powerful that you've isolated yourself from your own kind. The island's ecosystem revolves around you now. Your movements reshape the landscape. When you tear apart a rotting log searching for grubs, you expose new soil that allows different plants to take root. When you cache food in hidden spots, you inadvertently plant seeds that grow into new vegetation. Smaller creatures follow in your wake, feeding on the scraps you leave behind or taking advantage of the disturbances you create. You've become an ecosystem engineer, but this responsibility weighs heavily on your massive frame. Every decision you make ripples through the island's delicate balance. Choose the wrong hunting ground, and you might deprive other species of their food source. Claim too much territory, and you force smaller crabs into areas where they're more vulnerable to predators. The power to reshape your environment comes with consequences you never anticipated. The seasonal changes affect you differently now. During the dry months, your size works against you. Your massive body requires more water than smaller creatures, and you must venture farther from your usual territory to find adequate hydration. The journey to the island's interior, where permanent springs bubble up from underground, becomes a dangerous expedition. You're forced to cross territories that belong to other large predators, risking confrontation when you're already weakened by thirst. When the rains return, you face different challenges. Your burrow, expanded over years to accommodate your growing bulk, becomes a fortress but also a trap. The entrance that once seemed spacious now barely fits your massive frame. Getting in and out requires careful maneuvering, and you're vulnerable during those moments when you're partially exposed. Rival crabs have learned to time their attacks for these brief windows of opportunity. Your hunting strategies have evolved beyond simple predation. You've learned to manipulate other creatures, using them as unwitting tools in your schemes. You'll deliberately disturb a colony of seabirds, knowing that their panicked flight will reveal the location of hidden nests. You've discovered that certain fish species flee to predictable locations when threatened, allowing you to position yourself for an easy catch. Your intelligence has reached a level where you're not just reacting to your environment, but actively orchestrating it. The island's human visitors have become part of your calculations. You've learned their patterns, their schedules, their weaknesses. The researchers who visit monthly always camp in the same spot, always leave food scraps in predictable locations. The occasional tourist groups follow established trails, dropping items that you've learned to evaluate and claim. You've even figured out how to open certain containers, adding human refuse to your diverse diet. But humans also represent the greatest threat you've ever faced. Unlike other predators, they don't follow the natural rules of engagement. They have tools that can harm you from a distance, traps that you can't see or smell, and an intelligence that rivals your own. You've had close calls with researchers trying to tag you, narrowly escaping nets and tranquilizer darts. The memory of those encounters has made you more cautious, more paranoid. Your body has reached its physical limits. Each molt now brings diminishing returns, and the process has become increasingly dangerous. Your exoskeleton takes longer to harden, leaving you vulnerable for extended periods. The energy required for molting drains your reserves for weeks afterward. You've started timing these critical periods around the island's seasonal patterns, ensuring you have access to adequate food and shelter when you're at your weakest. The scars from countless battles tell the story of your rise to power. Missing claw tips from early territorial disputes, gouges in your carapace from predator encounters, patches where your exoskeleton grew back differently after particularly brutal molts. Each mark represents a lesson learned, a survival strategy refined. Your body has become a living map of every challenge you've overcome. Despite your dominance, you're not invincible. Age is beginning to take its toll in subtle ways. Your reflexes aren't quite as sharp as they once were. Your stamina doesn't last as long during extended hunts. The joint pain from old injuries becomes more pronounced during cold nights. You've learned to compensate, relying more on strategy and less on brute force. But the signs of decline are undeniable. The island's younger generation watches you with a mixture of fear and ambition. They keep their distance for now, but you can sense their calculations. They're waiting for signs of weakness, for the moment when the aging giant becomes vulnerable. Some have already begun testing your boundaries, making small incursions into your territory to gauge your response. The cycle of challenge and succession that brought you to power is beginning to turn once again. Yet even as your physical abilities begin to wane, your understanding of the island deepens. You've memorized every tide pool, every fallen tree, every cave and crevice. You know which areas flood during storms, which cliffs are stable enough to climb, which plants signal the presence of prey. This knowledge has become your greatest asset, allowing you to outmaneuver younger, stronger opponents through superior positioning and timing. The weight of your success has transformed you into something beyond a simple predator. You've become a force of nature, a living legend that shapes the behavior of every creature on the island. Your very presence alters the ecosystem's balance, and your eventual absence will create a vacuum that will reshape the island's future. The question isn't whether you'll fall, but when and what will rise to take your place. Your life as a coconut crab has reached a legendary status. For over a decade, you've ruled your island kingdom with an iron grip, literally. Your massive claws can crack coconuts like they're nothing more than paper shells. Your armor-plated carapace has deflected countless attacks from younger challengers who thought they could take your throne. You've survived storms that would level entire forests, droughts that killed lesser creatures, and predators that most animals wouldn't even dare to face. But time is the one enemy you cannot defeat. Your movements are slower now, more deliberate. What once required effortless strength now demands careful calculation. The lightning-fast reflexes that made you a terror to everything from birds to small mammals have dulled to something more measured. You're still deadly, still capable of crushing bones with your claws, but the raw, explosive power that defined your prime years has started to fade. Your territory remains vast, stretching across multiple acres of prime real estate. Every tree, every rock formation, every hidden burrow bears your scent. Other coconut crabs know better than to challenge you directly, but they're watching. They sense the subtle changes in your movements, the way you take longer to respond to threats, the fact that you're not patrolling your borders quite as frequently as you once did. You've adapted, of course. Intelligence has always been your greatest weapon, and age has only sharpened your cunning. Where brute force once solved problems, now you rely on strategy. You've learned to conserve energy, to choose your battles more carefully, to use intimidation rather than actual violence whenever possible. A single display of your massive claws, a threatening posture, a deep, aggressive hiss. These are often enough to send younger crabs scurrying back to their own territories. The hunting is still good. Your decades of experience have taught you exactly where to find the best prey, when to strike, and how to minimize energy expenditure. You know which birds nest where, which small mammals follow predictable patterns, which trees drop the ripest fruit. Your territory is a carefully managed ecosystem, and you're its apex predator and chief architect. But the loneliness is becoming harder to ignore. You haven't encountered another coconut crab of your size and age in years. Most of your generation is gone, claimed by predators, disease, accidents, or simply the relentless passage of time. The younger crabs that populate your territory are potential threats, not companions. They watch you from a distance, waiting for any sign of weakness, any opportunity to claim a piece of your empire. During the day, you retreat to your favorite shelter, a massive hollow in an ancient tree that you've modified over the years into the perfect fortress. The entrance is narrow, defensible, and positioned to give you a clear view of anyone approaching. Inside, you've created a comfortable chamber lined with soft materials, a throne room worthy of your status. You spend more time here now, conserving energy, digesting your meals, and listening to the sounds of your domain. Every rustle, every call, every movement is cataloged and analyzed. You can identify individual animals by their sounds, predict their behavior, and sense when something is out of place. Your territory is an extension of your body, and you feel every disturbance within it. The mating seasons come and go, but they hold little interest for you anymore. You've passed on your genes countless times over the years, and the drive to reproduce has been replaced by the drive to maintain your dominance. Your legacy isn't just genetic, it's territorial. The ecosystem you've shaped, the balance you've maintained, the order you've imposed on this corner of the world, when challenges do come, they're different now. Instead of direct confrontations, you face more subtle threats. A group of younger crabs might try to coordinate an assault on your territory, probing for weak points and testing your responses. You handle these situations with the wisdom of experience, using divide and conquer tactics, strategic retreats, and carefully timed shows of force. Your diet has evolved too. The massive meals that once fueled your growth are unnecessary now. You've become more selective, more efficient. A single, well-chosen prey item can sustain you for days. You've learned to supplement your diet with easier targets, fallen fruit, carrion, anything that provides nutrition without requiring a major expenditure of energy. The storms that once excited you, that brought opportunities for scavenging and territorial expansion, now require more careful preparation. You've weathered dozens of them, and you know exactly how to position yourself, where to take shelter, and how to emerge afterwards to take advantage of the changed landscape. Your shell, once a source of constant concern and frequent changes, has become a permanent fixture. You've outgrown the need for new shells, your exoskeleton having hardened into an impenetrable fortress. The shell you carry is more than protection now. It's a symbol of your status, polished smooth by decades of use, scarred by countless battles, but still intact. The island itself has changed around you. Trees you climbed as a juvenile have grown massive. Rock formations you once used as landmarks have been eroded by wind and rain. New growth has filled in old clearings, and old growth has fallen to make way for new. You've witnessed the complete transformation of your environment, and you've been one of the primary forces shaping that change. Your reputation extends far beyond your immediate territory. Birds know to avoid certain areas when you're active. Small mammals have learned to recognize your scent and adjust their behavior accordingly. Even larger predators, the ones that might have posed a threat in your younger years, now treat you with wary respect. But you can feel it, the subtle shift in the balance of power. Your responses are a fraction of a second slower. Your grip strength, while still formidable, doesn't quite match what it once was. Your night vision, always one of your greatest advantages, has started to dim slightly. These changes are minor, almost imperceptible, but they're there. The younger crabs sense it too. They're bolder now, more willing to push boundaries, to test your reactions. They don't challenge you directly. They're not suicidal, but they probe. They explore the edges of your territory. They investigate your food sources. They watch your routines with increasing interest. You adapt your strategies accordingly. Where once you might have chased off intruders with overwhelming force, now you use more subtle deterrence. You alter your patrol patterns to remain unpredictable. You create false signs of weakness to lure potential challengers into traps. You use your intelligence to compensate for the slight decline in your physical capabilities. The respect you command is absolute, but it's no longer based solely on raw power. It's based on legend, on reputation, on the accumulated weight of decades of dominance. You've become more than just a coconut crab. You've become a force of nature, a permanent feature of the island's ecosystem. Life as a coconut crab might be rough, but there's another animal out there that faces even greater challenges in its final years. The struggle for survival never ends. It just changes form, and every creature must eventually face the ultimate test of time. You are now over 7 years old, a massive creature weighing close to 9 pounds, with claws that can crack coconuts like eggs. Your territory spans nearly 2 acres of prime real estate, and every inch of it carries your scent. You've earned this dominance through years of violence, cunning, and relentless territorial expansion. Other coconut crabs give you a wide berth, and the few that dare challenge you quickly learn why that's a mistake. Your reputation precedes you across the island, and that reputation is built on decades of successful hunts, brutal fights, and strategic intelligence that has kept you alive when countless others have fallen. But dominance comes with a price. You spend most of your time alone now, patrolling your borders like a living fortress. The smaller crabs that once competed with you for scraps now scatter when they detect your pheromones. You've become so formidable that finding worthy opponents becomes increasingly rare. Most threats to your territory come from younger crabs testing their limits, and you dispatch them with an efficiency that borders on mechanical. A quick demonstration of your crushing power, a few threatening postures, and they retreat to safer hunting grounds. You've become the apex predator that other apex predators avoid. Your hunting techniques have evolved into an art form. You don't just climb trees anymore, you manipulate them. You've learned to shake branches with calculated force, timing your movements to when fruits are at their ripest. You can identify the perfect coconut from 50 feet away, sensing the liquid inside and the exact pressure needed to crack it open. Your claws have become surgical instruments, capable of delicate work when needed, but devastating when applied with full force. You've mastered the art of opening shells that would stump smaller crabs, and you've developed techniques for extracting meat from carcasses that maximize every calorie. The island ecosystem has shaped itself around your presence. Birds have learned to avoid your territory during nesting season. Smaller crabs have established their own hierarchies based on how far they are from your domain. Even the vegetation shows signs of your influence, with certain areas stripped bare from your feeding, while others remain untouched because they fall within your carefully managed resources. You've become a keystone species in your own right, an ecological force that shapes the environment through your very existence. Your intelligence has reached levels that would surprise researchers. You remember the exact locations of food sources from months ago, tracking seasonal patterns and predicting when certain resources will become available. You've developed problem solving skills that border on the uncanny, figuring out how to access food sources that should be impossible for a crab to reach. You understand cause and effect relationships that allow you to manipulate your environment in ways that give you significant advantages over competitors. Your memory has become a detailed map of the island, complete with safe routes, dangerous areas, and optimal hunting grounds. But this intelligence comes with an unexpected burden. You've begun to understand your own mortality in ways that simpler creatures never do. You notice when your movements aren't quite as fluid as they once were. You feel the accumulated damage from years of fighting, the small injuries that never quite healed properly, the subtle changes in your reflexes that indicate your body is no longer operating at peak efficiency. You've reached the stage where experience compensates for declining physical capabilities, but you're aware that this compensation has its limits. Your molting cycles have become increasingly dangerous. Each time you shed your shell, the process takes longer, leaving you vulnerable for extended periods. Your new exoskeleton doesn't harden quite as quickly as it used to, and the recovery period stretches from days to weeks. You've learned to time these molts with extreme precision, choosing locations that offer maximum protection and ensuring you have adequate food reserves to sustain yourself during the vulnerable periods. But you also know that each molt could be your last, that the process which once represented growth and renewal now carries the risk of death. The younger crabs watch you from a distance, studying your techniques and waiting for signs of weakness. They don't challenge you directly, but they probe your territory boundaries with increasing boldness. You respond to these tests with measured aggression, demonstrating that your power remains intact while conserving energy for more serious threats. You've become a master of psychological warfare, using your reputation and strategic displays of force to maintain control without constant physical confrontation. Your relationship with the island has evolved into something almost symbiotic. You've learned to read the subtle signs that indicate environmental changes, weather patterns, and resource availability. You can sense when storms are approaching days before they arrive, allowing you to secure food and shelter. You understand the complex relationships between different species and how changes in one population affect others. This knowledge has made you incredibly efficient at surviving challenges that would devastate less experienced crabs. The scars on your shell tell the story of your life. Each mark represents a battle won, a challenge overcome, a moment when survival hung in the balance. Your claws bear the evidence of countless fights, with chips and scratches that map out decades of conflict. Your carapace shows the wear patterns of a creature that has pushed its body to its limits repeatedly. These marks aren't just damage, they're proof of your resilience, your ability to endure and adapt to whatever the island throws at you. As your dominance solidifies, you begin to understand that true power isn't just about crushing force or territorial control. It's about understanding the complex web of relationships that govern life on the island. You've learned to predict the behavior of other species, to anticipate their needs and responses. This knowledge allows you to position yourself strategically, ensuring that you're always in the right place at the right time to capitalize on opportunities or avoid threats. The island will remember you long after you're gone. Your influence has shaped the evolutionary pressures that other crabs face, creating selection pressures that favor intelligence, caution, and strategic thinking. The techniques you've developed will be observed and copied by future generations. The territories you've established will become the foundation for new hierarchies. Your legacy isn't just in the battles you've won, but in the way you've changed the fundamental nature of competition on the island. You've reached the final years of your reign as a coconut crab, and the changes are becoming impossible to ignore. Your once indestructible shell now carries the weight of countless battles, scarred from territorial disputes and marked by the relentless passage of time. The claws that once crushed anything in their path still possess tremendous strength, but they move with deliberate caution now, each motion calculated to conserve energy that no longer flows as freely as it once did. Your territory remains yours, but maintaining it requires a different kind of strategy. The younger crabs that dare to challenge you are faster, but more aggressive, hungrier for dominance. They haven't learned the patience that comes with age, the understanding that brute force isn't always the answer. When they test your boundaries, you don't respond with the explosive violence of your prime. Instead, you rely on intimidation, positioning, and the hard-earned wisdom of decades spent ruling this land. The tree you've claimed as your primary shelter has become more than just a hiding place. It's a fortress, a monument to your survival. The hollowed-out trunk fits your massive frame perfectly, worn smooth by years of your presence. From this vantage point, you can survey your domain without exposing yourself unnecessarily. The climb to reach it has become more laborious, but it's still within your capabilities, and the elevation provides both safety and strategic advantage. Your hunting patterns have evolved with your limitations. Gone are the days of chasing down fast-moving prey across long distances. Now you hunt with precision, using ambush tactics and capitalizing on your intimate knowledge of every path, every hiding spot, every feeding ground within your territory. You've learned to read the rhythms of the island in ways that younger crabs cannot comprehend. You know when the birds will be most vulnerable, when the smaller crabs will venture into your domain, when the tide will bring opportunities to your doorstep. The memory of your peak years remains vivid, but it's tempered by the reality of your current state. You remember the feeling of absolute power, the certainty that nothing could challenge your dominance. That confidence hasn't entirely faded, but it's been replaced by something more nuanced. You understand your own mortality now, even if you can't fully grasp what that means. The instinct to survive remains as strong as ever, but it's paired with an awareness that survival requires adaptation. Other crabs watch you with a mixture of respect and calculation. The older ones remember your rise to power, the devastation you brought to previous rulers, the absolute authority you wielded in your prime. They maintain their distance, unwilling to test whether age has truly diminished your capabilities. The younger ones study you, learning from your movements, your choices, your responses to threats. Some are patient enough to wait for signs of weakness. Others are foolish enough to challenge you directly. When confrontations do occur, they're brutal but brief. You can't afford prolonged battles anymore, so you end them quickly, decisively. Your experience tells you exactly where to strike, how much force to apply, when to press an advantage, and when to withdraw. The younger crabs may have speed and energy, but they lack the tactical awareness that comes from decades of combat. They make mistakes, leave openings, underestimate the power that still resides in your scarred claws. Your relationship with the environment has deepened over the years. You've witnessed countless changes, survived storms that destroyed weaker crabs, adapted to shifts in food availability and territory boundaries. The island has become an extension of yourself, and you've become part of its ecosystem in ways that transcend simple predator-prey relationships. You know which trees will provide shelter during storms, which paths will offer escape routes, which areas will be most productive during different seasons. The humans who occasionally visit your territory have learned to give you space. Your reputation precedes you. Stories passed down through generations of researchers and locals who understand that you're not just another crab, but a living legend. They observe from a distance, documenting your behavior, marveling at your size and longevity. Some have attempted to approach over the years, but your response has always been clear and decisive. This is your domain, and trespassers are not welcome. Your sleep patterns have changed as well. The deep, restorative rest of your younger years has been replaced by lighter, more vigilant periods of dormancy. You remain alert to threats even while resting, ready to respond to any disturbance in your territory. The tree hollow provides security, but you've learned that true safety comes from constant awareness, not just physical barriers. As the seasons cycle past, you notice that your molting has become less frequent. The process that once marked regular periods of growth and renewal now occurs rarely, and when it does, it's more challenging than before. Your body takes longer to recover, longer to harden the new exoskeleton, longer to regain full strength. But with each successful molt, you prove once again that you're not ready to surrender your position. The island's ecosystem has shaped itself around your presence. Smaller crabs avoid certain areas entirely, knowing they belong to you. Birds alter their feeding patterns to account for your hunting grounds. Even the vegetation bears the marks of your passage, trees stripped of bark where you've climbed, branches broken under your weight, clearings created by your territorial activities. Your legacy isn't just written in the scars on your shell or the fear in your rival's eyes. It's embedded in the very structure of the island's social hierarchy. The younger crabs that will eventually inherit your territory are being shaped by your influence, learning lessons about power, survival, and dominance that will guide their own reigns. The cycle continues, but your impact will be felt long after you're gone. The end is approaching, though you don't understand it in those terms. What you understand is that each day requires more effort. Each hunt demands more careful planning. Each territorial defense takes more out of you than the last. But you're not finished yet. The fire that drove you to the top of the hierarchy still burns, dimmed but not extinguished. You are still the apex predator of this domain, still the ruler of your corner of the world. Your story is nearing its conclusion, but it's a conclusion worthy of the epic journey that brought you here. From the helpless larva drifting in the ocean to the absolute monarch of your terrestrial kingdom, you've lived a life of constant struggle, adaptation, and triumph. The island will remember you, the ecosystem will bear your mark, and the crabs that follow will walk in the paths you carved through decades of dominance. The ocean has been your world for so long, but now it's becoming your prison. You're 35 years old, a massive coconut crab who has ruled these islands for over a decade. Your claws can crack coconuts like they're made of paper. Your legs can carry you up the tallest palm trees, and your mere presence sends smaller crabs scurrying for cover. You should be at the peak of your power, but something is changing, something you can't fight with claws or intimidation. Your body is starting to betray you. The molting that once made you stronger now feels like a gamble you're not sure you'll win. Each time you shed your shell, the recovery takes longer. Your new exoskeleton doesn't harden as quickly as it used to, leaving you vulnerable for days instead of hours. Well, you've started timing these molts more carefully, waiting for the quietest moments when fewer threats are around. But quiet moments are becoming harder to find. The island is more crowded now. Younger crabs have been arriving, drawn by the same instincts that brought you here years ago. They're smaller, faster, and hungrier than you remember being. They don't challenge you directly, not yet, but they watch. They test boundaries. They steal scraps from your kills when they think you're not looking. You catch them, you punish them, but there are always more. Your hunting has become more strategic, out of necessity. The reckless charges that once served you well now leave you winded and sore. You've learned to use your size and experience instead of pure aggression. When you spot a seabird roosting too close to the ground, you don't sprint toward it anymore. You circle wide, using the terrain to mask your approach. You wait for the perfect moment, then strike with calculated precision. The bird tries to take off, but you're already there. Your claw closes around its wing, pinning it to the ground. It struggles frantically, but you've done this countless times before. You know exactly how much pressure to apply, exactly where to grip to end the fight quickly. The bird goes still, and you settle down to eat. But as you tear into the meat, you notice something that wasn't there before. Your movements are slower, more deliberate. The feast that once energized you now feels like work. Territory maintenance has become your obsession. You patrol the same routes every day, reinforcing scent markers that declare your ownership. The borders of your domain are sacred, and you defend them with increasing paranoia. When a younger crab accidentally crosses into your territory while chasing a hermit crab, you don't just chase it away, you pursue it for hundreds of meters, making sure it understands the consequences of trespassing. But the younger crabs are learning too. They've figured out your patrol patterns, your favorite hunting spots, your preferred resting areas. They don't challenge you openly, but they're mapping your weaknesses. You catch them watching from the shadows, noting how long it takes you to climb certain trees, how you favor your left claw after a recent injury. They're patient, and that patience unnerves you more than any direct threat. The hermit crabs that once provided easy meals are becoming harder to catch. They've adapted to your hunting style, learned to recognize your approach. They abandon their shells faster now, sacrificing their protection for speed. You find yourself working harder for smaller rewards, spending more energy on hunts that once required minimal effort. The mathematics of survival are shifting against you. Your relationship with the environment is changing too. The tides that once brought abundant food now seem less generous. The fruits that fall from the trees are often claimed by faster, more agile competitors before you can reach them. You've started hoarding food, creating hidden caches around your territory. It's not just about immediate hunger anymore. It's about preparing for the lean times you sense are coming. Social interactions have become more complex and dangerous. The loose alliances you once formed with other large crabs have dissolved into mutual suspicion. Everyone is calculating. Everyone is watching for signs of weakness. You've stopped sharing kills, stopped cooperating in hunts. Trust has become a luxury you can't afford. The younger females who once sought you out for mating now seem less interested. They still respond to your displays, but there's hesitation in their movements. They're evaluating you more carefully, comparing you to younger males who might offer better genetic prospects. You've had to become more aggressive in your courtship, more insistent in your territorial displays. But aggression born from desperation feels different from aggression born from strength. Your memory has become both a blessing and a curse. You remember every successful hunt, every defeated rival, every conquered territory. These memories fuel your confidence, remind you of your capabilities. But they also highlight how much has changed. The ease of past victories contrasts sharply with the effort required for current survival. You find yourself dwelling on these comparisons, wondering if your best days are behind you. The physical changes are undeniable now. Your exoskeleton, once smooth and pristine, bears the scars of countless battles. Your claws, still powerful, don't snap shut quite as quickly as they used to. Your legs, still strong enough to carry you anywhere on the island, sometimes ache after long climbs. These aren't debilitating changes, not yet, but they're reminders of mortality you can't ignore. You've started avoiding certain confrontations that you would have welcomed in your youth. When a particularly aggressive young male challenges your claim to a prime feeding spot, you weigh the costs more carefully. Is this piece of territory worth the energy expenditure? Will the fight leave you vulnerable to other threats? Sometimes, for the first time in your adult life, you choose to withdraw rather than fight. But retreat doesn't feel like wisdom. It feels like the beginning of the end. Each compromise, each strategic withdrawal, each moment of hesitation chips away at the legend you've built. The island remembers strength, and you're not sure how long it will remember yours. The nights have become longer, filled with hypervigilance that never quite lets you rest. You sleep with one eye open, listening for the sounds of approaching threats. The confidence that once let you sleep soundly has been replaced by the paranoia of someone who knows they have more to lose than to gain. Every shadow could hide a challenger. Every sound could signal an attack. Yet despite these changes, despite the growing challenges, you're still here, still alive, still fighting, still ruling your piece of this island kingdom. The crown may be heavier now, but it's still yours, and you'll wear it until the very end. As seasons pass and your body reaches its absolute peak, you've become more than just a predator. You've become a force of nature that shapes the very ecosystem around you. Every tree you climb leaves marks in the bark. Every shell you crack teaches other crabs about resource acquisition. Every territory you claim shifts the balance of power across the entire atoll. Your presence alone changes how other creatures behave, where they forage, when they move, and how they interact with their environment. But with this dominance comes an unexpected burden. You've outlived most of your generation. The crabs you once fought alongside as juveniles have long since fallen to predators, disease, or the countless hazards of island life. The territories you once competed for are now yours by default, not through conquest, but through sheer endurance. You've become the elder, the apex survivor, the one who remembers how things used to be when the competition was fierce and the stakes felt immediate. Your hunting patterns have evolved into something almost ritualistic. You no longer hunt purely from hunger, but from habit, from the deep-seated need to maintain your position at the top of the food chain. When you encounter younger crabs attempting to establish themselves, you don't just drive them away. You dominate them so completely that they alter their behavior for months afterward, avoiding not just your territory, but entire sections of the island where your scent lingers. The hermit crabs have developed new strategies specifically to avoid you. They've learned to recognize the sound of your approach from incredible distances, the particular rhythm of your massive claws against rock and coral. Some have even begun coordinating their movements, creating complex warning systems that ripple through their populations whenever you're detected in an area. You've become the boogeyman of their species, the shadow that haunts their collective memory. Your relationship with the birds has shifted as well. The seabirds that once saw you as just another predator now treat you with a mixture of respect and wariness. They've learned that you're not just opportunistic, but strategic, that you remember their nesting patterns and can anticipate their behavior. Some have even begun timing their activities around your movements, understanding that your presence often means safety from other threats. The smaller creatures of the island have adapted to your dominance in fascinating ways. Crabs that once competed directly with you for food sources have carved out new ecological niches, finding ways to exploit resources that don't bring them into direct conflict with your overwhelming presence. You've essentially forced an entire ecosystem to evolve around your existence, creating a complex web of relationships that all center on avoiding or accommodating your needs. But this absolute dominance comes with costs that you're only beginning to understand. Your body, despite its incredible adaptations, is starting to show the accumulated wear of decades of survival. Your exoskeleton, once perfectly smooth and impenetrable, now bears the scars of countless battles and encounters. Small fractures that once healed quickly now take longer to repair, and the constant stress of maintaining your territory has begun to take its toll. Your molt cycles have become more complex and dangerous. Each time you shed your shell, the process takes longer and leaves you vulnerable for extended periods. The new shell that forms is still formidable, but it's no longer quite as resilient as it once was. You've learned to be more selective about when and where you molt, choosing only the most secure locations and timing these vulnerable periods with extreme care. The abundance of food that once seemed endless has become more challenging to obtain. Not because resources are scarce, but because your energy requirements have increased while your efficiency has begun to decline. You need more food to maintain your massive frame, but the effort required to obtain it has grown more taxing. You find yourself having to work harder for meals that once came easily, and recovery between hunts takes longer than it used to. Your territorial patrols have become more routine and less exploratory. You know every rock, every crevice, every potential threat or opportunity within your domain. This knowledge is both a strength and a limitation. While you can navigate your territory with unmatched efficiency, you've also become somewhat predictable in your movements. Younger, more agile crabs have begun to study your patterns, learning to exploit the brief windows when you're focused elsewhere. The social dynamics of your species have evolved around your presence. Younger crabs no longer challenge you directly, but they've developed more sophisticated strategies for coexistence. They've learned to read your moods, to understand when you're likely to be aggressive versus when you might tolerate their presence. Some have even begun to benefit from your activities, following at a safe distance to scavenge the remains of your hunts or to occupy territories you've temporarily abandoned. Your memory, once focused primarily on immediate survival needs, has become a vast repository of decades of experience. You remember seasonal patterns that span years, the behavior of individual creatures across their entire lifespans, the subtle changes in your environment that signal larger shifts in the ecosystem. This accumulated knowledge makes you incredibly effective at reading your surroundings, but it also makes you increasingly aware of how much has changed since your youth. The ocean itself seems different now. The tides you once navigated as a young crab have shifted in subtle but significant ways. The coral reefs that provided shelter and hunting grounds have grown and changed, creating new opportunities but also new challenges. The fish populations that once provided easy meals have learned to avoid your preferred hunting spots, forcing you to adapt your strategies or seek new prey. Your relationship with humans has become more complex as well. The occasional researcher or tourist who ventures into your territory no longer sees you as just another interesting creature. Your size and obvious age make you a specimen of particular interest, and you've learned to recognize the signs of human attention. While you're not afraid of these encounters, you've become more selective about when and how you interact with these strange, bipedal visitors. The younger generation of your species looks to you not just as a threat to be avoided, but as a living example of what's possible. Your very existence proves that survival is achievable, that the countless challenges of island life can be overcome through skill, adaptation, and sheer determination. Some of the bolder juveniles have even begun to mimic your hunting techniques, though they lack the size and experience to execute them effectively. Your daily routines have become more methodical and less spontaneous. You've developed preferred routes through your territory, optimal timing for different activities, and established relationships with various food sources. This efficiency is born from decades of experience, but it also reflects a certain rigidity that wasn't present in your younger days. You're less likely to take risks, less inclined to explore new possibilities, more focused on maintaining what you've already achieved. The physical demands of your lifestyle have created a body that's both incredibly powerful and increasingly specialized. Your claws have grown so large and strong that they're perfectly adapted for cracking the hardest shells and climbing the steepest surfaces, but they're also becoming less versatile for delicate tasks. Your massive frame allows you to dominate any encounter, but it also requires more energy to maintain and makes you less agile in tight spaces. Your sensory abilities have reached their peak efficiency. You can detect the slightest vibrations in the ground, the faintest chemical traces in the air, the most subtle changes in light and shadow. This heightened awareness makes you incredibly effective at monitoring your territory and detecting threats, but it also means you're constantly processing an overwhelming amount of information. The world has become both more detailed and more taxing to navigate. The seasonal cycles that once brought variety and challenge to your life have become more predictable and routine. You know exactly when the seabirds will nest, when the hermit crabs will be most active, when the tides will bring the best foraging opportunities. This knowledge gives you tremendous advantages, but it also means that each day brings fewer surprises and less novelty. Your influence on the ecosystem has become so profound that your eventual decline will likely trigger significant changes throughout the island community. The territories you've claimed will become available for new occupants. The food sources you've monopolized will be redistributed, and the behavior patterns that various species have developed in response to your presence will need to be readjusted. You've become such a dominant force that your absence will be felt as strongly as your presence. The younger crabs in your territory have begun to show signs of preparing for this eventual transition. They're becoming bolder in their movements, more experimental in their hunting techniques, more aggressive in their interactions with each other. While they still give you a wide berth, they're clearly positioning themselves for the opportunities that will arise when your dominance finally wanes. Your own awareness of this inevitable decline has begun to influence your behavior in subtle ways. You're more possessive of your prime territories, more aggressive toward potential challengers, more focused on maintaining your current position rather than expanding into new areas. There's a defensive quality to your dominance now, a recognition that what you've built must be actively preserved rather than simply enjoyed. The legacy you're creating extends beyond just your immediate impact on the ecosystem. The techniques you've developed, the strategies you've employed, the adaptations you've made are all being observed and learned by the creatures around you. Future generations of crabs will benefit from the innovations you've pioneered, the paths you've cleared, the understanding you've gained about how to thrive in this challenging environment. Your story has become woven into the fabric of the island itself, a testament to the power of adaptation, determination, and survival. From the vulnerable zoea that once drifted helplessly in the ocean currents to the apex predator that now shapes an entire ecosystem, you've achieved something remarkable. You've not just survived but thrived, not just adapted but dominated, not just lived but truly mastered your environment. As the months pass, your once mighty grip begins to weaken imperceptibly. The claws that could crack coconuts with thunderous force now require more effort to accomplish the same tasks. Your joints, weathered by countless molts and years of constant use, begin to stiffen during the cool morning hours. The arthritis of age creeps through your exoskeleton like a slow tide, making each movement a calculated decision rather than an instinctive response. Your territory, once patrolled with relentless vigor, now receives more selective attention. You focus your energy on the most critical areas, the prime feeding grounds, and the central pathways that define your domain. Younger crabs, sensing the subtle shift in your presence, begin to test boundaries with increasing boldness. They venture closer to your favorite resting spots, their antennae twitching with curiosity and ambition. The seasonal rhythms that once energized you now serve as markers of your declining years. Each wet season brings challenges that tax your diminishing reserves. The intense humidity that once invigorated your gills now sometimes leaves you struggling for breath. You find yourself seeking higher ground more frequently, where the air moves more freely and the weight of moisture doesn't press so heavily against your respiratory system. Your hunting strategies evolve once again, this time driven by necessity rather than opportunism. The swift pursuit of fleeing prey becomes less viable, so you rely more heavily on ambush tactics and scavenging. Your knowledge of the island's rhythms serves you well as you position yourself along well-traveled paths where food sources are likely to pass within easy reach. The wisdom of age compensates for what raw strength can no longer provide. Sleep becomes both more necessary and more elusive. Your body requires longer periods of rest to recover from daily activities, yet the very act of remaining stationary for extended periods leaves you vulnerable. You develop a pattern of light dozing, maintaining just enough awareness to detect potential threats while allowing your weary system to recuperate. The constant vigilance that once came naturally now demands conscious effort. Your sensory world begins to contract gradually. The keen eyesight that once spotted movement across vast distances becomes less reliable in low-light conditions. Your antennae, though still sensitive, don't pick up the faintest chemical traces as readily as they once did. The world doesn't become silent or invisible, but it requires more active attention to interpret. You compensate by relying more heavily on your remaining sharp senses and the deep knowledge of your territory's patterns. The social dynamics of your domain shift in response to your changing presence. Younger crabs, while still respectful of your size and reputation, begin to establish their own hierarchies in the peripheral areas of your territory. You watch these developments with the detached interest of an elder statesman, intervening only when conflicts threaten to disrupt the broader balance you've worked years to establish. Your relationship with the environment takes on a different character. Where once you shaped the landscape through active manipulation, now you influence it through selective presence. The trails you've worn smooth over the years continue to channel the movement of other creatures. The feeding sites you've established remain productive gathering places for the island's fauna. Your legacy lives in the very geography of your domain. The changing seasons bring a new awareness of time's passage. You begin to notice patterns within patterns, the subtle variations that occur in multi-year cycles. Some coconut trees produce more heavily in certain years, creating abundance that echoes through the entire ecosystem. Weather patterns shift in ways that become apparent only through extended observation. This deep temporal knowledge becomes perhaps your greatest asset, allowing you to anticipate changes that younger crabs cannot perceive. Your final molt approaches with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. The process that once promised growth and renewal now carries significant risks. Your aging body may not possess the energy reserves necessary to complete the transformation successfully. The soft, vulnerable period following the molt could prove fatal if not carefully managed. You begin to prepare with the thoroughness of a veteran, seeking the most secure possible location and timing the event to coincide with optimal conditions. As your 8th year begins, the signs of deep aging become unmistakable. Your movements, while still purposeful, lack the fluid grace of your prime years. The vibrant colors of your shell have faded to more muted tones, and small battle scars from decades of conflict mark your carapace like a map of your experiences. Yet your eyes retain their intelligence, and your presence still commands respect throughout your domain. The island itself seems to acknowledge your transformation. The birds that once fled at your approach now observe you with cautious curiosity rather than terror. Smaller crabs venture closer, perhaps sensing that the era of your absolute dominance is drawing to a close. The ecosystem begins to subtly reorganize itself, preparing for the eventual transition that must come. Your appetite, once voracious and indiscriminate, becomes more selective. You find yourself drawn to specific foods that seem to provide the particular nutrients your aging body craves. Sometimes you spend long periods simply resting, conserving energy for the essential activities of survival. The frantic activity of your younger years gives way to a more measured approach to existence. Memory becomes both a comfort and a burden. You recall the territory as it was when you first claimed it, the changes you've witnessed, the countless interactions that have shaped your understanding of the world. These memories inform your decisions, but they also emphasize the weight of accumulated experience. The young crab that once acted on instinct alone now carries the complex knowledge of nearly a decade of survival. Your territorial boundaries, once defended with absolute determination, become more fluid. You allow certain incursions that you would never have tolerated in your prime, recognizing that the energy required for enforcement may exceed the value of the territory being defended. This strategic retreat is not defeat, but wisdom, the recognition that survival sometimes requires calculated concessions. The wet season of your 8th year proves particularly challenging. The heavy rains that once seemed invigorating now represent a trial to be endured. Your aging joints protest against the constant dampness, and your respiratory system struggles with the thick, humid air. You find yourself seeking shelter more frequently, waiting out the worst weather rather than forging ahead regardless of conditions. During one particularly violent storm, you witness the arrival of a new generation of young crabs, their shells still soft and their movements uncertain. They struggle against the same forces that once challenged you, their survival dependent on the same combination of strength, intelligence, and fortune that carried you through your own vulnerable beginnings. The cycle continues, indifferent to your individual journey, yet somehow connected to everything you've experienced. Your final confrontation with a serious rival comes unexpectedly. A mature crab, perhaps 6 years old and at the peak of its powers, challenges your claim to a prime feeding area. The battle is brief but decisive, not because of your superior strength, but because of your superior knowledge of the terrain and timing. You emerge victorious, but the effort leaves you exhausted in a way that similar conflicts never did in your prime. As autumn approaches, you find yourself drawn to the highest points of your territory, places where you can survey the entire domain you've ruled for so long. The view encompasses not just the physical landscape, but the invisible networks of relationships, territories, and seasonal patterns that you've come to understand with intimate precision. The island spreads below you like a living map of your experiences. Your interactions with other species take on a different quality. The birds that nest in your territory seem to recognize your changing status, becoming bolder in their movements, but not yet dismissive of your presence. The smaller crabs and insects that form the base of the food web continue their activities with the awareness that you remain a factor in their survival calculations, though perhaps not the overwhelming force you once represented. The approach of your 9th year brings a profound shift in your daily rhythms. Sleep becomes more frequent and deeper, as if your body is preparing for a longer rest. Your appetite continues to diminish, and you find yourself going days without actively hunting. The energy conservation that once was a strategic choice becomes a biological necessity. Your last successful hunt is a masterpiece of efficiency and experience. A young seabird, disoriented by fog, lands within reach of your hiding place. Your strike is slower than it once would have been, but perfectly timed and placed. The meal sustains you for nearly a week, and you recognize it as perhaps the final demonstration of your predatory capabilities. The seasonal migrations that have marked your years continue around you, but your participation becomes increasingly passive. You watch the patterns you've come to know so well, the arrival and departure of various species, the ebb and flow of resources that define the island's rhythms. Your role shifts from active participant to elder observer, your presence still influential, but no longer driving the system's dynamics. As winter approaches, you begin to spend more time in the deepest, most secure parts of your territory. The crevices and caves that once served as temporary shelters become semi-permanent residences. Your movements become increasingly deliberate, each expedition carefully planned to maximize efficiency and minimize risk. The spontaneous exploration that characterized your younger years gives way to calculated conservation of energy. Your final molt, if it comes, will be a private affair. You sense the approaching need for this transformation, but also understand that your aging body may not possess the resources to complete it successfully. The process that once promised growth and renewal now represents the ultimate gamble, with your life as the stake. The other crabs in your territory begin to behave differently toward you. The younger ones show less deference, while the older ones seem to recognize a kinship in your condition. The social hierarchy that you've dominated for years starts to shift, preparing for the vacuum that your eventual absence will create. The succession that you've prevented through strength and dominance begins to organize itself naturally. Your legacy is written in the very structure of the island ecosystem. The trails you've worn into the landscape will guide movement patterns for years to come. The feeding sites you've established will continue to serve as gathering places for countless creatures. The territorial boundaries you've enforced have created a stable framework within which other species have learned to thrive. The trees whose fruit you've harvested bear the marks of your presence. The coconut palms show the scars of your climbing, and their bases are littered with the shells of nuts you've cracked over the years. These markers will persist long after you're gone, silent testimony to the impact of your residence. The very soil is enriched by the organic matter you've brought to various locations, creating microclimates that support plant communities that might not otherwise exist. Your influence extends beyond the physical environment to the behavioral patterns of other species. The birds have learned to follow your activities, knowing that your feeding often creates opportunities for them. The smaller crabs have adapted their movements to account for your presence, developing strategies that acknowledge your role as apex predator while still allowing them to access necessary resources. As your ninth year progresses, you begin to experience periods of profound stillness. These are not the alert rests of your prime years, but deeper states of dormancy that seem to slow your entire system. Your breathing becomes more labored, and your responses to stimuli grow delayed. The inexorable process of aging accelerates, bringing you closer to the final transition that awaits all living things. Your territory, once patrolled with military precision, now receives only sporadic attention. You focus your remaining energy on the most essential activities, the basic requirements of survival that cannot be ignored. The elaborate territorial displays that once defined your presence become too costly to maintain. Your domain begins to contract around you, shrinking to encompass only the most critical areas. The final season of your life unfolds with a mixture of struggle and acceptance. Your body, which has carried you through nearly a decade of survival, growth, and dominance, begins to fail in small but significant ways. Your grip, once capable of crushing coconuts, can barely hold your own weight during climbing. Your vision, though still functional, lacks the sharp clarity that once made you such an effective predator. Yet even in decline, you remain a formidable presence. Your size alone commands respect, and your knowledge of the territory's secrets continues to give you advantages over younger competitors. You survive through cunning and experience, using every lesson learned over your long life to extend your existence for as long as possible. The end, when it comes, is not the violent conclusion of a dramatic battle, but the quiet cessation of a system that has simply reached the limits of its endurance. You find yourself in a familiar shelter, a cave you've used for years during the worst weather. Your breathing becomes increasingly labored, and your movement slowed at an almost imperceptible pace. As your consciousness fades, the sounds of the island continue around you. The crash of waves against the shore, the rustle of palm fronds in the wind, the calls of seabirds beginning their morning activities. These sounds, which have formed the soundtrack of your entire terrestrial existence, provide a final connection to the world you're leaving behind. Your death marks not an ending, but a transformation. Your body, which has dominated this corner of the island for so long, becomes a source of nutrients for countless other organisms. The bacteria and insects that begin the decomposition process are soon joined by larger scavengers, creating a feeding frenzy that will sustain the local ecosystem for weeks. The territory you've ruled for so long doesn't remain vacant. Within days of your passing, younger crabs begin to explore the boundaries you've maintained for years. The hierarchies that your presence suppressed begin to assert themselves, leading to conflicts and territorial disputes that will eventually establish a new balance of power. Your death creates opportunities throughout the ecosystem. The feeding sites you've dominated become accessible to smaller species. The trails you've maintained continue to channel movement, but no longer carry the threat of your presence. The island begins to reorganize itself around your absence, adapting to the new reality of life without its longtime apex predator. Yet your influence persists in countless ways. The young crabs that establish themselves in portions of your former territory inherit not just the physical space, but the ecological relationships you've created. The birds that learned to follow your activities transfer their attention to your successors, maintaining behavioral patterns that your presence established. The very structure of the local food web bears the imprint of your long dominance. The seasonal cycles that marked your years continue without interruption. The wet seasons bring their abundance, the dry seasons their challenges. The migrations that provided you with hunting opportunities still arrive on schedule, though they now encounter a different predatory landscape. The island's rhythms, which seem so intimately connected to your presence, reveal themselves to be larger patterns of which you are just one part. Your life, from the vulnerable Zoea drifting in the ocean currents to the mighty terrestrial predator ruling an island domain, represents one complete cycle in the endless story of survival and adaptation. You transformed from prey to predator, from follower to leader, from small and vulnerable to large and dominant. Your journey encompassed nearly every possible role in the ecosystem, from the bottom of the food chain to its apex. The legacy you leave behind is complex and multifaceted. It exists in the physical modifications you made to your environment, in the behavioral adaptations of other species to your presence, and in the genetic material you contributed to future generations. Your offspring, scattered across various islands, carry forward the traits that made your survival possible, ensuring that your influence extends far beyond the boundaries of your individual existence. The story of your life illuminates the broader themes of existence in the natural world: the struggle for survival, the competition for resources, the adaptation to changing conditions, the inevitable cycle of growth and decline. Your individual journey, unique in its specific details, follows patterns that connect you to all life on Earth. From your perspective as a coconut crab, the world was a place of constant challenge and opportunity. Every day brought decisions that could mean the difference between life and death, between success and failure, between dominance and submission. Your survival required not just physical strength and speed, but intelligence, adaptability, and the ability to learn from experience. The complexity of your existence, from the intricate process of molting to the sophisticated social hierarchies of your species, demonstrates the remarkable adaptability of life. Your ability to transition from aquatic to terrestrial existence, to modify your behavior in response to seasonal changes, to establish and maintain territory against all challengers, speaks to the incredible plasticity of living systems. Your death, like your life, serves a purpose in the greater scheme of the ecosystem. The nutrients your body provides will fuel the growth of plants and the reproduction of countless smaller organisms. The territory you vacated will provide opportunities for new generations to establish themselves and continue the cycle of life. Your passing removes one predator from the system while creating resources for hundreds of other organisms. The island you've called home for nearly a decade continues its own existence, shaped by your presence but not defined by it. The forces that created your opportunities, the climate, the geography, the seasonal patterns, remain in place to challenge and support future generations. The stage remains set for other young crabs to attempt their own journeys from vulnerability to dominance. Your complete life as a coconut crab, from birth to death, represents a masterpiece of adaptation and survival. You began as one of millions of larvae, most of whom would never reach maturity. Through a combination of strength, intelligence, and fortune, you not only survived but thrived, ultimately becoming the dominant force in your corner of the world. The transformation you underwent, from microscopic zoea to massive terrestrial predator, ranks among the most remarkable metamorphoses in the natural world. Your journey required you to master multiple environments, from the open ocean to the forest canopy, to develop skills ranging from swimming to climbing to hunting. Few creatures on Earth undergo such dramatic changes while maintaining their essential identity. Your story ends, but the patterns it represents continue. Somewhere in the ocean, new larvae are beginning their own perilous journeys toward shore. Some will find suitable homes and begin the long process of growth and adaptation. A few will survive long enough to establish territories and continue the cycle of reproduction. The endless story of life continues, with each individual contributing their unique chapter to the larger narrative of existence. And so, your extraordinary journey as a coconut crab comes to its inevitable end. From the moment you emerged as a microscopic zoea in the vast Pacific, your life has been a testament to the raw power of adaptation and survival. You began as one of millions, a tiny speck of life, floating in an ocean that seemed determined to destroy you. Yet through countless molts, battles, and transformations, you defied those overwhelming odds. Your metamorphosis from aquatic larva to terrestrial giant represents one of nature's most remarkable achievements. You conquered not just one environment, but two entirely different worlds. The ocean taught you resilience, while the land rewarded you with dominance. Each shell you outgrew, each predator you evaded, each territory you claimed, shaped you into something truly extraordinary. As decades passed, you became more than just a survivor. You evolved into an architect of your ecosystem, a living force that shaped the very landscape around you. Your powerful claws opened coconuts that other creatures couldn't access, spreading seeds across the island. Your burrows created shelter for smaller animals. Your presence influenced the behavior of every other species in your territory. The scars covering your shell tell the story of a life fully lived. Each mark represents a battle fought, a challenge overcome, a moment when death seemed certain, but you pressed on. These weren't just wounds, they were medals of honor, proof of your indomitable spirit. Through territorial disputes, mating competitions, and the constant struggle for resources, you never backed down. Your final years brought wisdom that only comes with age. You learned when to fight and when to retreat, when to take risks, and when to conserve energy. The young crabs who once challenged you now gave you the respect that comes with surviving in a world that destroys the weak. You became a living legend, proof that persistence and adaptation can overcome any obstacle. Even in death, your impact continues. Your massive shell becomes shelter for hermit crabs. Your body nourishes the soil that feeds the plants. The territories you established, the paths you carved, the very ecosystem you helped shape, all remain as monuments to your existence. Future generations of coconut crabs will benefit from the environment you helped create. Your life as a coconut crab represents the ultimate triumph of will over circumstance. You transformed from the most vulnerable creature imaginable into one of the most formidable. You proved that size, strength, and intelligence can develop from the humblest beginnings. You showed that survival isn't just about living, it's about thriving, adapting, and leaving the world different than you found it. This is the complete life of a coconut crab, a story of transformation, perseverance, and the eternal cycle of life that continues long after any individual journey ends.